Hello everybody, welcome back to the workshop. So today I wanted to take and have a real quick discussion about wrought iron. Mainly what type of wrought iron is good for forging and what type of wrought iron you want to avoid. Now, with that being said, there's going to be some kickback on that. All wrought iron you can forge. Not all of it will you have a great time with. So the things that you want to specifically look for in wrought iron is you want to look at the purpose that the wrought iron was used for. We take for granted that today we have a lot of steels, we have a lot of alloys of steels, a lot of different carbon contents, a lot of different steels that are meant for different purposes and things like that. And it just it gets so nuanced that we forget that back when the wrought iron was being produced, they used wrought iron very specifically. They had grades of wrought iron just like they have modern day grades of steel. You don't use a structural steel when you're needing a high tensile strength application where you need something that has high, like a high carbon content in it, or so to speak, or something for tooling. You wouldn't just use plain structural grade steel. Same thing in wrought iron. So a lot of wrought iron that you find these days is ornamental iron, or stuff that was used in fence pickets and gates and things of that nature. And in general, that wrought iron, it has a coarser grain structure. It has a coarser grain flow to it. Now wrought iron has a very fibrous grain like wood. And it's very, very true. That's not a blanket statement, it's just truth. That it is true about the material, that it has a fibrous grain structure like wood. However, that can be refined. Oftentimes, stuff that was used in the ornamental portions of things, they did not need to be structural elements. Now, there's certain parts of a gate that may have been structural in nature, and so therefore they needed to take and have a much more refined fibrous grain structure, as where with, like, say, the pickets or the uprights or something, not so much, or the scroll work or ornamentation, not so much. So when at all possible, check the wrought iron for some of these three key things. One key thing, delamination. So delamination is a place where you get a pocket like that. That's delamination there. That is where moisture has gotten through to it and has basically rusted or has ate into the piece. Decay or deterioration has happened between the silica structure and the iron structure of the wrought iron. And so therefore, you want to be careful, and you kind of want to avoid that as a trait. If you find a piece and it just looks like it's all frayed out, you're going to have a horrible time. You're going to lose a lot of mass by trying to get it all stuck back together. It can be done, but it is something that maybe you want to take and stray away from. Okay? The second thing that you want to take and stray away from when it comes to wrought iron is any wrought iron that seems to have cracking. Now, I don't have a piece here because I stray away from it myself, but if you get any lateral cracks this way, right? Not longitudinal, because that's just delamination, but cracking across grain or across the fiber, stay away from that wrought iron. It is only going to create headaches for you. Now, if all you've got are that as an option, you can try forging on it. Maybe it's just that particular section, but that in general has a poor fibrous grain structure. Then maybe it had some other alloys in it and it wasn't good to begin with. And the smith who probably used it probably fought it the entire time to take and get it there. So that's the second thing you want to take and stay away from. The third and the last thing that you want to stay away from with wrought iron, if you can help it, is too small. So wrought iron is very spongy, so it compresses a lot when forging. So things that you would normally think would only take, say, a 1-inch cube of material, say in mild steel or A36, a structural grade of steel, okay? Something that would take, a structural grade of steel, 1-inch cube, you could forge it out yay long or whatever. Wrought iron, not so much. again, it's got the silica, it's got the slag in between the layers, and as that mushes out, as you refine that grain structure further down, it really reduces in volume or in mass very, very quickly. So you may find, oh, I've got a ton of these little tiny strips of wrought iron out of fencing. This is what I'm talking about here, scroll work or something like that. I'll just straighten all those up and I will weld them all up into a usable chunk. You are going to spend a very long day at getting all those welded up to a bar that has enough mass that you can actually do something with, say making a hammer or some ornamental door knocker, or who knows what it is that happens to tickle your fancy. So thin strips, cracking across or laterally across the grain structure, and you want to stay away from stuff that has heavy delaminations. Those are the 3 tips for that. Now, let's get to the good stuff. What should you look for? Any sizable chunk of wrought iron. Something like this, stuff that was used in the bridge industry, stuff that was used in the wagon industry, or like the wheels on the wagon for the wheelwright. Anything that you get really old wagon wheels that are broken and being scrapped, basically. A lot of times you'll find these out in somebody's garden bed planted as a decoration for yard art around here in Ohio. That is a very good quality. Most of it, especially if you source it from the eastern half of the United States, is very refined, very good quality wrought iron. Now, as you move a little further west, not so much. It deteriorates because the supply chains were longer. And so a lot of the wheels there were scabbed and repieced together and refixed back, and they had bits of horseshoe nails and who knows what else in them just to get up enough mass to make maybe make repairs and things like that, because wagon wheels were not, as you head west, weren't as good. So think of it in a historical mindset when you're looking for wrought iron. You can occasionally find railroad spikes, old railroad spikes that, if you can obtain them legally, will have wrought iron in them. They usually have a WR stamped on them, or just an R. Like this one here has an ROH on it. Those are wrought iron. As you can see here, kind of got a tore out grain structure. Well, you probably can't see. I don't have the camera up close enough. But I tested this. It was very soft. It was very soft in forging on it. So I'm like, well, I think that's some wrought iron. And sure enough, bent it, and it snapped off with a really highly refined grain structure. Now, again, this is a spike. This is a railroad. So they're going to want quality iron products in order to take and be able to make the railroad. Now, this isn't always true. Be careful of truisms there. This isn't always true, but it is what I have found to genuinely be so for the most part. So those are just some ways that you can find wrought iron. You can find it in bars like this, lengths of bars. A good way of checking this is to look at the end of the bar itself. You'll see almost like dots at the end of the bar. That is those fibers pointing out at you. A lot of times you'll have somebody take a saw cut on them and bend it off or break it off, and you'll find where the end grain is just snapped right here on one edge, but it's been sawn through most of the way. Again, that can notate wrought iron. Now, I know all this is wrought iron because I bought it from one person, and it's all bridge steel. But, again, that's where you have to take into consideration what was the material used for and why, where you're getting it from. Sometimes that information is not available to you, and then you just got to do a little bit of experimentation. Now, I want to cut one notion out before I end this video, and I know it's been going on fairly long. One notion is that wrought iron is very hard to work with. Excuse me. This is a false notion. Wrought iron is not a very hard thing to work with. In fact, it is a beautiful material to work with, but you need to understand that it has a grain structure and a pattern a lot of the way just like a Damascus steel would have. It it has a longitudinal grain structure, it has that fibrous nature like wood, and so therefore you need to treat it like wood in a lot of ways. Wrought iron welds beautifully. A lot of times when you see something open up on it, pop open like a delamination like this. Now most of this bar is good, but it's got a good delam start clear back to here. When something like that pops open on you, and I've got dirt and junk in there, I'm going to heat that up, throw a little flux in there, kind of rinse it around a bit, and weld that thing down. Bring it up to a nice white heat, and I can weld that right back in. It's not lost, so I don't have to lose that material. I can still salvage it and use it for other stuff. Wrought iron lends itself very well to welding because those fiber structures work together and nest together very tightly, kind of like the ends of a wire or rope that you're twisting up. They can mesh into one another very well, so it really lends itself to that, and it's a beautiful thing to forge weld. It's also nice, very nice to cut. Punching and drifting holes through, that's where you'll run into problems again, because you're creating a splitting wedge action on something that likes to act like wood, right? So those are some of the operations that are a little trickier to get around, and you kind of have to think a little bit around the corner on those versus just punching and slamming a hole through some mild steel. So again, it's not hard to work on, it's just a little bit different, and I highly encourage anybody, if you can find some old wrought iron, do not stray away from it. Definitely pick it up. Don't let it just go to the scrapper and be burnt, you know, and things like that. Even if it's a poor quality wrought iron, like I said, it can be refined. Joey Van Deersteeg, he did one where he took a bunch of little bits and pieces and twisted them and put them together and cut and restacked and kind of twisted it all up and forged them out into useful bars. And that was from really fine stuff, small stuff, put it all together and made up a billet big enough to do, I believe he did a hammer out of them, if I'm not mistaken. He did a bunch of other little projects and stuff out of wrought iron. I'll put a link to his videos in the description and up here in one of the cards here at the end of this video. You know, definitely go check that out, but it's a great way of showing that there's a lot of things that you can still do with wrought iron if you can get a hold of it. So, no, it is not a hard material to work, it just takes a little extra thinking outside the box. So, that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please remember to leave it a like and comment down below what you thought. If you got any questions on wrought iron, I hope to be answering those in a lot more videos on the subject as I continue through the process of my wrought iron sledgehammer with steel faces welded in, and I've got other wrought iron videos. Again, I'll just start popping them up here and there, links and cards and all that good stuff that YouTube allows you to do, and it'll be down in the description box as well. You can go check it out there. So that's it. Once again, thank you all for being here. I hope I answered some questions. If you got more questions, chuck them in the comments. And as always, God bless you. We will catch you on the next one.